Hello and welcome to my EPQ. This is an extended project qualification and I'm going to be doing an astrological report on Princess Diana. The reason why I chose Diana for this astrological report is because I found her a really inspirational person, someone who was so loved by the public, and it fascinated me from hearing it from my mum. And I briefly remember watching her death in the news being reported, and it really touched me because I heard about how many people were so sad about it. So this is going to be using 3 different types of astrology: Western astrology, Vedic astrology, and the Draconic chart, which is a branch of the Western astrology but is more to do with a different focus, which I will explain later. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about Diana. Diana was born on July the 1st, 1961 at 7:45. She was born into an aristocratic family and she married Prince Charles when she was 20 years old. Unfortunately, they divorced. She had 2 boys with him who are now grown men, who we know as Prince William and Prince Harry. Then she was chased by the media. She died in Paris in 1997. I decided to find out more information on 3 areas of her life: her personality, her relationships with people, and her death. And I've used these different types of astrology to try and find that. So I'm going to start off with what I found in Western astrology. I found this the most fun for me, and I researched this to the T because I already knew quite a lot about it, but this was an opportunity for me to explore different aspects of someone's chart and learn more about how it works. So if you can see Diana's chart, she had an ascendant, which is how you are shown to the outside world, your public persona, the first impressions of you. It's the outward you, it's the external you, and that was in Sagittarius. And this shows that her physicality as well, how she could be slender, which she was, and quite tall. But most importantly, she had warmth and people warmed to her straight away. She was friendly, she was almost jolly and quite charismatic. Her public display was very different from her inner her, and this is seen from her ascendant to her moon sign, which we'll go on to later. But this kind of friendly, warm ascendant is actually present in Kim Kardashian. Even though they're completely different figures, they are loved by the public, or the public are fascinated with them. And that's because these people, they have a thirst for knowledge, they have a thirst for people, and there's a natural curiosity with these people. Next, we're going to Sun in Cancer. Now, the Sun sign is what you read in the magazines, and she was a Cancer. She was blessed with being compassionate and sensitive, which she was. She was loved by people and she needed love herself. Cancers need love. They need to feel appreciated, but they also want to spread it out. And your Sun represents your career sometimes, and this obviously was true with how much charity work she did. And she was a patron for many organisations, and she was the president of Great Ormond Street as well. This is placed in her 7th house, and this just makes her even more set in stone that she was supposed to work with people. I mean, people are her niche. She knows how to communicate with them. She's incredibly passionate about communicating with people. It also shows that she was shaped by her relationships, so her marriage, which in some essence she was, because she was very young when she got married, and she didn't really know what she was. And this is present in the interview she did with Martin for BBC. She has Moon in Aquarius, which means that at heart your Moon is where your emotions are, it's where you feel most comfortable, it's your home. It's she felt most comfortable being humanitarian, helping others, doing charity things, going out and seeing people and communicating, connecting and linking up different areas of life. And with this unique combination of Sun and Cancer, this very watery, emotional sign, with sort of the area Aquarius, which is very worldly and universal, it kind of makes that cancer sensitivity she has, and compassion and understanding, more universal, more wide. And this would have been very useful in what she did. She did a lot of charity work. Her Aquarius is in the second house, which I think sums it up perfectly, because this is ruled by Taurus. So although a lot of these things were ideas and existential for her, she needed to connect, she needed to be physically there and touching people. And one of her famous quotes was said, "The people that I care about are out there on the street. I can identify with them." Now that just shows the extent of her Moon in Aquarius, so her want to be with people, yet she wanted to actually be there. It's not just all in her ideas and her imagination. One thing I would say about having Moon in Aquarius is that you can become quite detached from your own feelings and be better with counselling others than yourself, which we can see in that interview with Martin, which she did for BBC, where she said that she always felt like she had to be the face and to do things for other people, but she didn't really understand herself. Next we move on. She has Mercury in Cancer, another watery sign, another emotional sign, and it's in her sign, it's in the planet Mercury. Mercury is all about how you communicate, how you analyse things, how you program things in your brain, and this is in the watery and emotional sign of Cancer. And you know, it's easy to say that they were just sensitive, but they can be moody. And you know, her relationship with the royals, that would have not gone down well if, you know, she wasn't feeling her best. She would cry or she would let it out, and because of the environment she was in, this wouldn't have gone down very well with the Queen. And she has it in the 7th house again, great with working with people, so emphasising and understanding the other person, and everything in her chart really is about understanding the other and not really getting to grasp with themselves. And that's why she had a lot of illnesses. You know, she had depression, she had bulimia, which she talks about in that interview. She has Venus in Taurus, so we're changing to a very... Venus is all about how you flirt, what you love, what you like, what you find interesting, what you are inspired by. And this is in the earthy Taurus. So she liked stability, she liked tradition, and that's how she felt safe. And she was incredibly loyal. That's what makes it very hard for me to believe that Harry is someone else's. Controversial. It was in her 5th house, which is all to do with entertainment and kids, and it shows that the real joy in her life was when she had her children. And we can see that with what the media reported. She was so heavily involved with her children, and not just her own children, but we're talking about children in the hospitals that she worked with, and children all over the place. Now I'm picking out some of her very poignant aspects in her chart. She had Moon square Venus, and because Moon is your emotions and Venus is what you like, and this is supposed to be if it's a good aspect, so if we would see a conjunction or a sextile or a trine, conjunctions can be hard as well, I guess. Because this is a square, we see that she values harmony so much that she may give in to others easily. this might cause resentment, and there's also distinct need for approval. She wanted to be liked. That's what her whole chart is about as well, and I think that's why she played for the royals very well. She was in that mix, and she wanted to do the best for her husband, even though it was an extremely pressurised situation she was in. I mean, she was thrown in this marriage. It was forced on Prince Charles. Are you going to marry Diana or you're not? If you're not, then you have to stop seeing her. So he did. So they didn't really know each other very well. She can easily be taken advantage of, and she has a lot of insecurity because of this. This is such, I think, an important aspect because it shows her vulnerability and her want to be liked and her want to be a good person and to show up and do all the right things. But really inside she was struggling with a lot of resentment because that's not really what she wanted to do. Now she has Moon trine midheaven, and I thought this was really interesting because it just emphasises the idea about how she was such a strong emotional being. Your moon is ruled by emotions. It is emotions. It represents that. It represents your home, and it's trining. So it's good aspecting. It's a good aspect to your midheaven, which is your most outwardly persona. It's what you're like to the public. It's sometimes to do with your career. So this aspect entails for Diana that she may become so emotionally attached to people. She is living a very emotional life, and someone can be a sun in Cancer and not feel as much as she did. She felt everything, and this was evidence in just the way she spoke. She spoke with such emotion and sincerity, and I think that was really appealing to people to see that from a royal in the family. It's so different because you see the Charles and you see the Queen, and they talk with such strength and sort of aloofness, whereas Diana had strength, yet she had an emotional tongue, a twist with it that I think really captured the public. Also, this kind of placement shows that she preferred someone with a sense of history instead of some sense of something modern. And we can see that, she did go for a very old establishment. She went into the royal family, and in some part of her, in some essence of her, that was attractive to her, that traditional vibe. Yet then we see kind of, because we're very complex beings, and so was Diana, she was a human being, and she has Uranus sextile midheaven, which is another good aspect. Now Uranus is a very zany planet. It's kind of rebellious. It's kind of freedom loving, and that is sextiling her midheaven. And this shows that other people may keep her from doing things. Inside she likes freedom and she wants to have self-expression. People kind of rein her in, which we can see in the royals. They reined her in. They did not like how normal she was, and normal in an extraordinary way. She says in the interview with Martin that they couldn't deal with her crying very much. She was just very self-expressive as well, and they wouldn't have liked that. In fact, this placement works well that if she believes in something, she will work hard at it, and she doesn't really care if anyone else doesn't think it or believe it, but she's going to go and do it. And this is going to give her like this offbeat sort of vibe, and she was very different from what she was supposed to be. Now, if we move on to her relationship with Charles, which I think is such a big area of her life, Charles, he was a Scorpio. He had Venus and Libra in the 4th house, so he had an eye for beautiful things. He knew when he found a gem, and Diana was definitely a gem. Although he had Mars and Jupiter in like the flirtatious Sagittarius, which could make him full of vitality and self-expression. Now, if we look at that synastry chart they have together, which will be to the side of me, their synastry charts together shows how a relationship kind of goes together, what aspects aspect each other. In Charles's chart, his sun is placed in Diana's 11th house, which rules friendship, indicating they will be good friends. So although their relationship has some crazy points, there's a base, there's a friendship there, which is important. Diana's sun is placed, surprisingly, well, not so surprisingly, in his 12th house, which rules sort of mysteries. She always felt like she couldn't pin him down. Which was right. You know, he never really was committed to her in the sense of solely committed to her, like in his heart, because his eyes were on someone else who we now know as Camilla. You know, when anything's in the 12th house, it's a mystery. You know, the 12th house rules hospitals, it rules prisons, things that are sort of your subconscious. It's things that you can't grasp, it's things that are sort of painful, and that's what her sun was in his 12th house. Now if we move to the moon, which in a synastry chart it shows where you feel vulnerable or if you feel loved by that person. Now Charles's moon is placed in Diana's 4th house, signifying that Diana brought warmth to him and a sense of home, which is evident. She did bring him a family, you know, with Prince Harry and William, and she was an incredibly warm person, almost too warm for what he wanted. Diana's moon is placed in his 8th house. This shows that sometimes Diana may not have felt like she was safe enough to express herself fully. Now if we move on to Venus, Venus rules in a synastry chart what we value and justice and what we like and dislike. Diana's Venus was placed in the 11th house, meaning that there is a strong sense of friendship. Diana, which I think this is so accurate, brought him into the future. You know, showed him this is how it's supposed to be. We're not back in the old times, we're here, and this is new trends, and this is how it's supposed to be. Now, a Mars placement in a chart rules sex and drive to do things. It's a very masculine planet. Now, Charles's Mars was placed in Diana's 1st house. This shows that she may have seen him as the motivator, an ultimate sort of male figure, someone who she thought was really strong. And she really admired Charles. You know, you see in interviews and she had a sort of sparkle in her eye, especially when they first got together. He was sort of an embodiment for her of everything that is male. Although it may have seemed to him that she was a bit impatient and she always wanted to get her way. And I think that's very much what Charles thought, you know. They must have got very frustrated with her because she was very much, I'm going to go and do that, and they were constantly there with the reins. Charles's Saturn is in Diana's 8th house. Now 8th house is pretty dark house to have it in, and Saturn is the father. Saturn is going to teach you lessons. Saturn is a pretty terrible planet. Everyone's got Saturn, so they're going to have to work with it, but it shows that she may have seen him as reserved and less intimate, as if sharing with him was something really distant and hard to reach. She may have seen like bigger issues like inheritance is more important than her, and she would not have liked that. An aspect in their chart that I find interesting was that Charles' sun is in square to Diana's moon, which is a hard aspect. So this shows that they might have found it hard because they kind of didn't fulfill each other's expectations. So they were expecting something very different than what they got. E.g., I think Diana, you know, thought I'll be a princess and he'll be my prince, but it wasn't like that. It was a very difficult marriage. There was 3 people in the marriage. So that concludes the Western astrology side. Now I'm going to move on to Vedic astrology. Now I'm going to have the chart up here. She had a Scorpio ascendant, which means that she was very willful. If she wanted something, she had the intensity to go get it. And we can see that with how she lived her life. If she wanted to go somewhere, she would go. And I think that was a really good thing. And she kind of saved the royals because she broke up. She made them seem more normal. She forced them into sort of becoming more normal because of what a big problem she was to them. She had Sun and Scorpio with Gemini in the 8th house. This means that part of her goals was to communicate about secrets and things that are hidden and sort of not in view of the public, not in view of anything. And this is a perfect example. She exposed the whole HIV and AIDS epidemic. She went and she showed that you can hug someone with AIDS, you can be around them, you know, because before that it was such a taboo subject. And she really opened people's eyes up and said, you know, these people are human beings, and I want to show you that. And that's what she did. It's a great thing she did. Pulling it back to her early life, she has Moon in Aquarius in the 4th house, in Ketu in the 4th house, K2. And this kind of signifies that there was a detachment with the mother, which is documented. She says that she didn't get on with her mother, and her parents divorced when she was younger. So this kind of is shown in her chart. Sun is in the 8th house, and it represents the father, and Mars is in the 10th house, which shows that there was a power struggle. Even though there was a better relationship with her father, there was also a power struggle. She had also very interesting planets in houses for her education. Now, it's also documented that she didn't get any O-levels. She found it very difficult in school. She went to a special school. She didn't find learning easy through the typical way. Now, she has Jupiter, and it's debilitated in the 3rd house of discomforts, which means she had a discomfort with teachers. And as Saturn is the delayer of things, so Saturn was there and was like, no, you are not going to learn. She has Mercury in the 8th house, in Sun, and Mercury in K2, which means that this brings the detachment as a whole to learning. Her marriage, Jupiter also represents her husband, or your potential husband. And it was in Capricorn, which means that, you know, her husband was going to be cunning, and maybe he was going to put loads of responsibilities on her and make her feel like it's a duty to do things, which we can see with Charles. She was incredibly pressurized, and she was just thrown into it, and it must have been very hard for her. Moving on to death, and I think Vedic astrology is very interesting how they talk about death, and it's interesting to note that actually she was born in a Jupiter-Saturn-Mercury retrograde, and she died there too, in Rahu. And Ketu was in the 4th house and 10th house, which signifies life and death, which was interesting. Wherever Rahu is in the chart, you can say, I can't see my, and hers was in the 10th house, which means I can't see my power, position, and fame. Which is interesting because she ran off once trying to be a normal citizen without any bodyguards. Like, she was almost disregarding of how many people, how much she was putting herself in danger, really, because she was so famous. Lastly, I would like to touch on Draconic astrology, which I think is a really interesting area of Western astrology. It looks at your soul and your soul motivations and your interaction. It's less personality, and it's more your internal, something that is there from you from birth. And sometimes the world can create you, but this is just always there inside you. This is Diana at a soul level. Diana at a soul level had Virgo in the 7th house. She was incredibly self-sacrificing to other people. She was incredibly self-serving. And that's what she loved to do. She wants to be there for people, not only in an emotional way, but in a practical way. And that's why she was seen not only just supporting those charities, but being actually physically there. It was very important to be physically there. She wants to take care of you. She also, there's a part of her that wants to be taken care of that maybe didn't really happen a lot in her life. She is Cancer ascendant, so her soul mask is the same as her sun sign. So really how compassionate and loving and understanding she was, that's what she was at a soul level. And that's what I think people could see, this genuine woman, a beautiful, iconic woman who is a humanitarian, a mother who stood up for people, was genuinely compassionate and wanted to help you. On a soul level though, this can also mean that she suffered some self-esteem problems. She doubted herself quite a lot. She was vulnerable, was incredibly sort of insecure, and I think this insecurity and this vulnerability was the lock, was the almost like the key in the chain that made her so lovable to the public. People could relate to her. People can't relate to the royals the way they related to her. Her drive and her compassion to want more, for people to make, she really wanted to make the world a better place, and it was genuine, and I think that's what people liked. She had Mercury and Sun in Aquarius, which is sort of different to her, well, it is very different to her actual Sun chart. In one way, because I think with the moon and with Sun and Mercury in the kind of zany Aquarius, inside she had these, when you connect with her on a soul level, she could be weird and she could be eccentric, and she's very worldly, but sort of when she was talking out to the public and to people, she had that Cancer compassion. So it created a beautiful mixture which really made her shine. She had Mars in Aries, which really shows how fiery and determined she was. You know, there is not many people that could do the things she did, because she was so instinctive at a soul level. She was so she was like a child at soul level with doing things, with getting up and getting out there, because she'd just go up and do it. She didn't think about it, and I think this is shown through her life, with everything she did compared to what she was told to do. Lastly, I'm going to end on her Venus in Sagittarius. It shows that really deep down inside, on a soul level, she loved love and exploring things and travelling, and she was maybe a little bit of a flirt. And I think that's the side that she liked. She loved being free and travelling and being with her boys, and she wanted to have fun, and that's what she liked. You know, there was this humanitarian side of her, and there was this very loving side of her that was definitely there, but what she should have really done for herself, and what she liked for herself on a soul level, was to have fun and explore, and to not only be that person for everyone else, but to have some fun for herself. And I believe that some areas of her life restricted her for that. That is all. I think that in conclusion we can kind of combine all these areas, and it shows that she had a very interesting combination, and that is what's beautiful about her. So I want to end with that. Thank you for watching.